Uh, the following items do not intervene in tangled hair of the head or the armpit or a man's private parts. Rabbi Eliezer says both men and women are the same, and that everything that which one finds disturbing does not intervene. Anything which one does not find disturbing does not intervene. Rheum in the eye and incrustation on a wound, wet wet sap, smears of wet dirt on one's body, dirt under the nail, a dangling nail, a child's downy hair neither admits tumor nor transmits tumor. However, a skin on a wound admits tumor and transmits tumor. The following cases are an intervention regarding utensils: pitch or musk on a glassware, whether on the inside or the outside, when found on a table or on a tray or on a cot, they are otherwise clean. It does not intervene, but if they are otherwise soiled, it does not intervene. It does intervene, but if they are soiled, it does not intervene. On the beds of a householder, it does intervene, but on those of a poor person, it does not intervene. On the paddle sack of a householder, it does intervene, but on those of water skin carriers, it does not intervene. On a saddle cloth, it does intervene. Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel says only if the soil is at least the size of an Italian isser. Okay.
So if it's just on one side of clothing, in other words, I think you're talking about sort of clothing that can be inverted. So if you see it's dirty, but I'll just wear it with the dirt on the inside, and that'll be okay. Okay, then you could actually take it to mikveh like that. Mishneh, however, if it's dirty on both sides, it's a chatzitza. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Mishum, Rabbi Yishmael. So he says, Rabbi Yehuda in the name of Rabbi Yishmael, Af mitzad echad, said, no, in general, even if there's dirt even on one side, then it's a chatzitza. That is so he disagrees with the Tanna Kama. Rabbi Yossi Omer, Shel Banayim, when it comes to builders, and you'll see that when we talk about builders, we're not talking about like your kablan who's sitting there and doing work over here. We're talking about the bonei olam, in other words, talmidei chachamim.
Right.
So why does he use the word banaim rather than talmidei chachamim in the Mishnah? I'm not sure. I mean, it would have been clearer if he'd said it that way, unless he's like specifically coming to teach us that talmidei chachamim are builders of the world. But it doesn't make sense unless you learn it that way, because mitzad echad, he says of these builders, any side is a chatzitza. Why? Because a talmid chacham who goes out with a stain on his garment is like chayv misa, because it's like such a chilul Hashem that somebody who's a talmid chacham can go out with stained clothing. It's just not menschlich. Shal bor mishnei tzadim. You see, it's contrasted with a boar. I'm versus the boar, versus the boar. Okay, but a boar has got to be on both sides. So if it's just a stam amaretz who's not like particularly makpid on his appearance, then it would only be a chatzitza if it's got stains on both sides. Okay. Mishna Zayin mitpachas shel zapatim. Okay, so the apron of people who put pitch on barrels. Okay. Vishel mefasle ilanos, or people who pruning trees. Okay. This is a work garment. They're not trying to make it clean. It's there to protect their underclothes, their regular clothes. So they're expecting it fully to get dirty. There is no such thing as a chatzitza on these. There's just no such thing. Okay, it's a work garment and it will get dirty, and they're not makpid on it in the slightest. Okay, Rabbi Yehuda Omer Afshal kayatzin kiyotze behen, and the same thing goes for people who are, I think, kayatzin are pruners, people who are who drying figs.
Right, fruit dryers, right.
Fruit dryers. Okay, they also get stained. Zeklal. Your general rule is again, so just look at what the deal is in society. If you're makpid that this should be clean, then it'll be a chatzitza. If you're not makpid that it should be clean, then there's no chatzitza. Okay, that is, however, talking only about where the dirt is less than half of the garment, because we got to take a look again at what is the fundamental Torah law, is that for Minat Torah, something is only a chatzitza if it covers more than half of the thing and you don't want it and you might be on it. Okay, so the Torah requires both of these before it's called a chatzitza.
Mhm.
Chazal added a stringency onto that and said, look, even if one of the two conditions is true, then it's called a chatzitza. So either if it's more than half, or if you're makpid on it. Okay, so if you're not makpid on it, that's great as far as Chazal are concerned, until it gets to the point of where it's more than half.
Yeah. Okay.
Once it's more than half, then we're gonna call it a chatzitza as well, even if you don't care. All right. Perek Yud. Kol yados kalim. So some kalim have got handles, and those handles can detach. So for example, imagine a frying pan with a big wooden handle. Okay.
Right.
You're obviously old enough to remember where you things screwed in and screwed out.
Right.
Okay, wooden handle on the frying pan. Okay, so now kol yados kalim shehechnisan shelo kedarkan. So if you took it and shoved it in the wrong way, or just didn't put it in properly, or shechnisan kedarkan v'lo merkan, or you put them in properly but didn't lo merkan, didn't tighten it properly, or shemerkan v'nishbaru, or he tightened them and they broke. So this now is called a chatzitza, because it's not it's not the way that the kli is used, and that will interfere. Kli shehit bilo derech piv. What happens if you let's say you've got to take a pot and you don't want to toivel it, and you put it in upside down, so it catches this big air bubble, and you push it down under the water. Why? Because that air inside it is going to prevent the water from coming in, and it's kind of like tightly closing your mouth, because there's no way that the water can go in there. You have to turn it so that the water can get in. Hitbelo kedarko below ziboris. So what's the situation here of below ziboris? In other words, it's a kind of a piece on the kli, which means that that's sort of turned under, so that so let's say on the rim, if the rim comes up and over on the inside, and you put it in normally, so it'll catch that air on inside that rim. Okay. So again, what you got to do is make sure that it's possible for the water to get in by turning it on its side once it's underwater, so that the air can escape and the water can get in. Okay. Now, let's say you've got a little jug where again the rim is turned inwards. Now, the only way that you can get the air out of there is by making a little hole in it to allow the air to escape. Okay. Kalmarin hediotos. The kalmar is like an inkwell, I think. Is that right?
Seems like a bottle. Oh, yeah, no, a layman's inkwell cannot become tahor.
An inkwell, right? So a layman's inkwell cannot be purified. So also it's built in such a way that it'll trap air. Then you've got to make a hole in it in order to enable the air to escape, so that you can toivel it. Well, Kamarin shel Yosef HaKohen haisa nekua b'tzida. So as a case to illustrate this point, there was a person called Yosef HaKohen who had a lot of inkwells, and he was makpid to make a hole in the side so that he would be able to toivel them.
Okay.
All right.
Okay. Yud if a sponge or bucket contained 3 lugim of water and it fell into a mikveh, it is not disqualified, because all they said was 3 lugim fell in.
Okay, we wanted to start with hay, but carry on.
Hey. If a chest or a box was in the sea, and one may not immerse anything in it unless it has a hole the size of a wooden waterskin tube. Rabbi Yehuda says, in the case of a large vessel, 4 tefachim; in the case of a small vessel, the greater part. If a sack or a basket, if it was a sack or a basket, one may immerse things in it, however it is, because its water is mingled. And if they were placed under a pipe, they do not disqualify a mikvah. One may even immerse them and lift them out of their usual way. If there was a broken earthenware vessel in a mikveh and one immersed therein, utensils, they become purified from the tumah, but they are still tumah on account of the earthenware vessel. If the water flowed over it, even a little, they are tahor. If a spring issues forth into an oven, and one went down and immersed himself therein, he becomes tahor. but his hands are tummy, and if there was water above the height of the hands, then the hands too are tahor. The mingling of mikvos must be as much as the size of a water skin tube as its thickness and its hole, which is the area in which two fingers can rotate. If there is a doubt whether there was as much as a water skin tube or whether there was not as much as a water skin tube, it is invalid because it is required by Torah law. Similarly, an olive size of a corpse and an olive size of a carcass and a lentil size of keeping things, anything that settles in the opening that is the size of a water skin tube reduces it. Reb Shimon ben Gamil says any organism that develops from the water is tahor.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
And
Hay
pause.
base.
If one said, I touch this object, but I do not know whether it's tummy or it's tahor, or if I touch one of the objects, but I do not know which one of the two I touch, Rabbi Akiva rules him tummy, but the sages say he's tahor. Rabbi Yossi rules him tummy in all the cases, but rules him tahor in the case of the path, for it is the way of people to walk, but not the way to return, not the way to touch. Regarding two paths, one tummy and one tahor, if one walks on one of them and then prepared taharos, and then were eaten, it was sprinkled once and again and immersed and purified themselves, and then walked on the second path and prepared taharos, they are tahor. If the first taharos are extinct, then these and those are suspended. If he did not purify himself in the interim, the first is suspended and the second should be burned. Regarding a sheretz and a frog in the public domain, if someone touched one of them and prepared taharos and they were eaten, and he immersed and touched the second object and prepared taharos, these taharos are tahor. If the first taharos are extinct, these and those are suspended. And if he did not immerse in the interim, the first taharos are suspended and the second taharos should be burned.
Okay. Oalos.
Okay. Test Vav Aleph. No, test Zayin Aleph. No, Vav.
Whatever. Aleph.
All movable items of a tumor when they are as thick as a goad. Reb Tarfon said, may I bury my children if this was not a mistaken ruling which a listener heard and misunderstood. A farmer was once walking with his goad on his shoulder and formed an ohel over the grave. The Chachamim declared him tummy because the utensils sheltered a corpse. Rabbi Akiva said, I will amend the rulings that the words of the sages remain valid, and all movable objects convey tumah upon the person who carries them when they are as thick as a goad. As a goad upon themselves, even if they are very thin, and upon another person, and the other utensils when they are a hand's breadth wide. How so? If a spindle was embedded in a wall, and there was a piece of corpse half the size of an olive beneath it, and another piece half the size of an olive above it, even though they are not one or the other, they are spindle is tameh. Thus it spreads tumah onto itself, no matter what size it is. If a person who sells earthenware pots was passing by a grave with a carrying pole on his shoulder, at one end of which forms a roof over a grave, the utensils on the other end of the pole are tahor. However, if the carrying pole is a handbreadth wide, the utensils become tameh. Mounds that are either near a town or road are tameh, whether they are new or old. However, concerning the distant ones, these are those that are new are tahor, the old ones are tameh. What is meant by near? Within 50 cubits. And what is considered old? Any that are 60 years old. These are the words of a mayor. Rabbi Yehuda says near means no other is closer, and old means that there is no one remembers it. Someone who finds a corpse lying in its usual manner for the first time may remove it along with the surrounding earth. Someone who finds two corpses may remove them along with their surrounding earth. Someone who finds three corpses that are between 4 and 8 cubits apart has located a district of a grave. Once it has been determined to be a district of graves, it must be searched for additional area of 20 cubits. If he finds even one grave within 20 cubits, he must search from it an additional 20 cubits. For the basis for concern, if he had found only this grave initially, he would be required to take it along with the surrounding earth.
Okay. Colin.
And Peshe. The remnant of an animal slaughtered by a Gentile, which is nevela, it is forbidden. If one curdles milk in a kosher maw, it has enough to impart flavor, then it's forbidden. If a kosher animal suckles from a treifa, its rennet is forbidden. If a treifa suckles from a kosher animal, its rennet is permissible because we gather its insides. There's a stringency in Caleb over blood, and there's a stringency in blood over Caleb. The stringency in Caleb is that one is guilty of one me'ilah on its account, and one is liable on its account for pigel left over and truma, which is not the case with blood. The stringency of blood is that the prohibition of blood applies to domestic animals, beasts, and fowls, both non-kosher and kosher, whereas the prohibition of kosher applies only to kosher domestic animals. The hide, the gravy, the spices, the shreds, the bones, the kidney, the horns, and the hooves combine to provide tuma of foods, but not the tuma of the velas. Similarly, if one slaughters a non-kosher animal for a Gentile and it still convulses, it conveys the tuma of foods, but not the tuma of the velas until it dies or until it chops its head off. Scripture has provided for more things that convey tuma of foods than that convey tuma of even velas. Rabbi Yehuda says shreds that are gathered together. If there's a volume of olive in one place, one is liable on its account.
And I think this Mishnah is repeated in Toros, isn't it?
I'm sorry?
This Mishnah is actually repeated in Toros. Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Sota. Solid. The wife of a Kohen may drink, and she is then permitted to return to her husband. The wife of a sterile man may drink. A warning can be issued even in respect to all those forbidden in marriage by reason of kinship, with the exception of a minor and one that is not a human. The following are the women to whom the courts give warning: one whose husband has become a deaf mute or mentally incompetent, or who has been incarcerated in a prison. They did not say this in regard to giving her to drink, but only in regard to disqualifying her from receiving payment for a marriage contract. Yossi says, even in regard to her giving her a drink, so that when her husband comes out of prison, he will give her to drink. Just as the waters test her, so the waters test him, as it is stated, and they shall enter, and they shall enter. Just as he is prohibited to the husband, so she is permitted to the adulterer, as she became defiled, and he defiled, and be defiled. These are the words of Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Yeshua says, so to Zechariah ben Achatav expound. Rabbi Rebbe says these two mentions in the passage, if she had become defiled, he defiled. One is regard to the husband, the other regard to the adulterer. On the day Rebbe Akiva expounded, any earthenware utensil into which any of them falls, whatever is in it shall become tameh. It does not.
No, sorry, that's already for tomorrow.
I went too fast.
The basis, yeah, basis for tomorrow.
Okay.
Okay, Shabbos.
Okay. Olive base. A person may not sit down before a barber shortly before the time of mincha until he prays. Neither may a person enter a bathhouse nor a tannery, nor may begin to eat nor to judge. But if he started, he may not interrupt. They must interrupt for the recitation of Shema, but they not interrupt for prayer. A tailor may not go out with his needle shortly before nightfall, lest he forget and go out. Neither may a scribe go out with his pen, and one may neither devouse his garments nor read by the light of a lamp. Indeed, they said the teacher may see where the children are reading, but he may not read. Similarly, a zav may not eat with a zava, since he might lead to sin. And these are the halachos that they stated in the upper chamber of the Kanana ben Kizkiah ben Gurin when they went out to visit him. They were counted and Beit Shammai numbered Beis Hillel, and they decreed 18 measures on that day.
Okay. So,
thank you.
And we done.
Okay. Have a great night. I'll see you tomorrow.
Good
Thank
day.
you.
Okay, bye.
Well.